What's going on, everybody? Cheers. Happy Wednesday, and welcome to this week's episode of the With Her Two Hands podcast, where each week we celebrate the women who build, fix, and make the things that make the world go around with her own two hands. I am your host, Bogey, and tonight I'm very excited to be joined by a young woman who I met recently. She is a certified Harley Davidson technician, and I am really excited to hear her story, and I think you guys are going to really enjoy meeting her as well. But really quick, welcome to anybody who is new here, who hasn't been here before. This series is all about celebrating women who work in the trades. We are definitely a minority, less than 10% across the trades and less than 2% in some trades. So definitely a small but mighty and growing number. And this podcast is all about shining a light on these incredible women who are just kicking butt every day out in the field, dealing with all of the different things that women deal with as a minority in these industries. We're hoping to see that number grow. And along with you guys, we're here to normalize women in the trade. So I thank you guys for being part of that revolution. And without further ado, I'm going to bring on tonight's guest, Miss Jamison Buccola. I think did I pronounce your name right?
Buccola, yeah, I think so.
Buccola. Okay, awesome. Well, welcome. Hello.
Hello, thank you.
Thank you so much for saying yes and agreeing to be on this series.
Of course. I'm so excited to be here.
So introduce yourself to the fine folks at home. Tell them your name, where you're from, what you do.
My name is Jamison Buccola. I am a certified Harley Davidson technician. I just actually took a class that brought me up a level, so I'm an advanced level technician now. I'm originally from Virginia. That's where I grew up. I've moved around quite a bit, though. I went to Florida for a little bit. I lived in South Carolina for a couple of years, and now I'm in North Carolina. So that's the main bit about me.
All right. Awesome. So let's dig in a little bit. Did you always know that you were going to grow up to become a motorcycle technician when you were a little girl?
No. If you asked me like 3 years ago, actually, I would have had no idea that I would be doing this.
Okay.
Yeah.
What were you doing 3 years ago?
I was a server, hostess, like food runner at a restaurant. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I never really would have thought that I would be here. It was never like when I was little, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a mechanic or anything like that. Never a thought in my mind. But it just kind of came up out of nowhere. My mom always kind of like hinted at the fact that like I would probably be good at it. Just from me, like anytime I had a car that would have an issue, I would tinker on it myself or try to fix it myself before bringing it somewhere else. And I always had success in that. I never had an issue with it. It always worked. So I was like, okay, cool. And she kind of told me like, you should look into like doing this. And I never really did because I was like, no, I don't think so. Like, because I never really thought I had that. And then finally I started riding motorcycles. And the more I got into motorcycles and just kind of got more into the community of it, I had never worked on a motorcycle before at all. I had a motorcycle, but I never really had the opportunity or need to work on it. So I never tinkered with it. But just being in that environment and her kind of knowing that I probably had the skill sets to do something like that. She was like, oh, you should be a motorcycle mechanic. Like that would be even cooler. Right. So I finally had the opportunity to like really do whatever I wanted, for the first time in a while. And I kind of just sat and thought about it. And I was like, wow, you know what? I was like, I do really like motorcycles and I like being in that community. I like the whole feeling of it and the vibe. And I was like, I could go to motorcycle mechanic school for like less than a year and like completely start my career with just that. So I was like, why not like, and shoot my shot and see what happens. So I've only been in the field working for 2 years. I went to school for about a year at MMI and so literally like if you would ask me 3 years ago, I never would have thought that that's where I would be right now.
Crazy. Okay. Yeah. So first of all, like, how cool is it that your mom like just saw this in you and like, did she have any framework of reference? Did she know anybody who was a technician, or were either of you around this? Because it's not the average mom that says like, honey, I think you'd make a great motorcycle mechanic to their little girl. Like, I love that happened. That's amazing, but that's not the norm.
No, and I think it's kind of partially like that motherly instinct type thing. And, she watched me a lot and watched like the things that I do. Um, and I think just from watching me, like I said, like tinker on cars and stuff and be able to just fix things. I've always kind of been like critical thinker, problem solver kind of person. And I think from that, she just kind of was like, I feel like you could do something with that, and you kind of just have this natural ability to like problem solve and figure out what the issue is and look at it and be like, yeah, I could take that apart and put it back together, So I think it just kind of blossomed from that.
Awesome.
I didn't grow up, like in a family that had like mechanics. I had a grandpa that was an electrician, but like that's kind of like the closest thing that I had to it. I didn't grow up in a family of motorcycle riders. I kind of just did it myself. So yeah, it really just kind of blossomed out of nowhere.
Amazing. I love it. Okay, so I have to dig in a little bit on this. Your mom saw you fixing your own car and saw that you had a knack for it. Again, I go back to like, I love hearing this, but this is also not generally the norm for a young person who doesn't have any experience with cars to say, hey, I think I can do this myself. And definitely we still live in a world where like that's not the norm for young women. What was it that had you like, that gave you, I guess, the courage and the confidence to say, like, oh, my car's broken. Let me see if I can fix it myself. Do you know where that came from? Was it just a natural interest?
Yeah, I guess it really was. Because I'm trying to think back to like one of the first things I remember doing, just off the top of my head, is I had a car that I actually had hit a deer at one point, but it was like minor, like in the front. But it cracked my radiator. And so it got to the point where my radiator was like leaking. And I was young and broke and like really didn't have a lot of money to like go and get it fixed. And it was an old car too. So it's not like, why throw a bunch of money into it? And I don't know if they have anything like this like around the country, but there's a place called Pick and Save where you could go. It's just like a lot full of like cars that are like usually wrecked or something. And they just throw them there. You can go and like look for the parts yourself and pull them and then buy them, right? Pick and Save, you just pick the parts yourself. And as long as you take them out of the cars, you could take them, right? So I kind of just had this thought of like, I looked at it, like I remember like opening the hood, kind of looking at it, assessing the situation. And I was like, I feel like I could probably just change this myself. Like, I feel like I could just fix it myself. It can't really be that hard, right? And again, I think it just plays into like my natural ability, like what my mom probably saw in me to just be able to fix stuff and like problem solve and figure it out. And so I looked at it and I was like, well, if I can find the same thing at Pick and Save and I can change it, I'll do it. And there's a picture of me somewhere too, where I have the radiator from the car that I pulled out of it. And I'm like smiling super big. So I'm like, look at me. I pulled this radiator out of the car. And I remember going around to Pick and Save. I was looking at all the cars and I was like, because I took a bunch of pictures of the radiator I needed. So then I would go over and like compare it to what I was looking for. And I just searched through, pulled the radiator and then dropped it into my car and it worked. And I was like, cool. So it worked out.
Amazing.
And I think from that, anytime I had something come up, I'm like, I feel like I would look at it and assess it and be like, is this something that I think I could maybe do? And if I felt like I could do it, I just went ahead and did it and see what I could do. So
I love it.
It just kind of happened. I felt like I could, so I just went with it.
Were you always a confident kid? Like you would just take on whatever, or was this a unique sort of situation?
No, I don't feel like I was. I'm still not very confident in myself. It's something I definitely fight with myself a lot on. And it's something that I'm constantly like working with myself with. I don't know. I think it was just some weird, like it just happened to work out and I was like, cool,
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. Do you mind me asking how old you were ish when this happened? when this was
Like
this
when I first
your
like
radiator adventure where you're like, I can actually do this thing myself. And
so I was probably because I actually remember pretty well because when I took that picture, I had just gotten my nails done for prom, which if you met me now, me getting my nails done is never a thing that I would do. Like it's not who I am at all. Like I can't function with fake nails. Even then I couldn't, but I was just like trying to be a cutesy girl and like get my nails done for prom, right? So and that was my senior prom. So I had to have been like
oh my gosh.
17, 18
So you were
when I
a
did that.
baby.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I mean, I guess that's a testament to how things are changing.
Mhm.
And, I still don't think that's the norm.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably not even the norm for young boys anymore. Like, I feel like when I talk to like high school age boys, they're not like,
Mhm.
oh, I think I'm going to try fixing my car myself. They're like, you know,
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
it's
They're
just
not
not.
like adamant or think about it really, you know?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. I love that you had the wherewithal despite the fact that you think that you weren't that confident of a kid.
Yeah.
It's
I
so
guess it's
interesting.
I guess it's a good thing to like saying it out loud and talking about it is something for me to realize too. Like I was just naturally kind of confident about it without me even realizing it, you know?
Yeah.
And I just did it, you know, not knowing what the outcome would be like. So it is kind of
Yeah.
cool to like look back on stuff like that and talk about it. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I realized things that like, oh, I was confident without even like realizing I was, you know?
You're more confident
So
than you realized. Yeah, because that takes a lot to say, I think I can do this myself and then
yeah,
go and do it and be successful. Like
yeah,
that's huge. And that's awesome that your mom was supportive and that there was never any like pushback on that. That's
yeah,
really cool.
yeah.
Okay, so what gets you into motorcycles? You didn't grow up around it, don't have family. What drew you to motorcycles?
So I ended up getting kind of in a crowd of people in my hometown. I dated a guy that had a motorcycle, and that's kind of like what got me into it. In between him and like, because he had gotten into like a pretty decent sized group of people there that were constantly riding motorcycles all the time. We were all on sports bikes, so I did start in the sports bike world, riding wise. So that's kind of how I got started. I learned how to ride just on, I actually rode some bikes that I had no business riding at the level that I was at. It was ridiculous. Bikes that were way too big for me at the time for just learning. But yeah, I just kind of got into it because of that. And I remember I met him and started dating him, and I was like, let me ride your motorcycle. And it was like, all right, cool. Actually, no, now that I think about it, there was actually somebody, it was even cooler. So I learned a lot from him, yes, because I did date him and then like I was around bikes more. But actually, I learned because I met a guy at the dog park actually, and
Okay.
he rode motorcycles and we got to talking about it. And I was like, let me learn how to ride a motorcycle using your motorcycle. Cause again, confidence that I didn't know I had. Um,
You're
and
sounding very confident, Jamison.
And so I was young and delusional. That's pretty much really what it was. So he was surprisingly on board and he had a Ducati Monster. And we took it to a parking lot and he literally just let me learn on it. And
Amazing.
I learned how to ride like pretty much within like, I learned like the basic concept of it right there in a parking lot. And I remember the second I did it, it's all I thought about, like all night long for like weeks. I was like, I want to ride that motorcycle again, you know? And it really just blossomed from there. And then, of course, I met more people. And then I met said boyfriend at the time that also had a motorcycle. And he was friends with people that I also already knew that rode motorcycles and stuff. So I just kind of got like fully involved in it from there. And it just took off and I haven't stopped since.
I absolutely love it. That's so awesome. And yes, you were definitely sounding like a very confident young woman. I don't know what this whole struggle is that you alluded to, but I'm not seeing it.
Uh,
Okay, so you fall in love with motorcycles. I love how that happens too. I feel like there's just, there's things in life that we try and we're like, okay, yeah, I could take it or leave it. And then
mhm.
there's things in life that were like, oh my God, my life is forever changed
Yeah.
the minute I try this thing. And that was motorcycles and mechanical things for you. Both of those things.
Yeah, it was. And I've I've always kind of been the type of person where like I'll try anything once kind of thing, like you're saying, to kind of just see, like, and to get that experience too. I think it's just cool. And so I had been around motorcycles like a little bit here and there from just like kind of like random events and stuff that I had been to. So I had seen it, but like I really wasn't involved with it that much. But like, and I rode dirt bikes and stuff a little bit here and there, like as a kid, like I had friends that would have dirt bikes and four-wheelers and stuff like that. So I did kind of know like the excitement of it a little bit, but not on the scale of like, oh, a motorcycle, like on a road, you know, like, and just kind of have that full freedom. And so like after I did it once, I was like, oh yeah, I definitely want to do this. Yeah.
Done deal. Okay. So you fall in love with motorcycles. You know, you have this mechanical ability. Mom convinces you. What then transpires? You decide, all right, I'm going to go for it. Did you know how to go about going to school, or had you heard of MMI? Because I know that's where you went to school, right?
So I had heard about it briefly, because actually in that first group that I was in of motorcycle people, I actually met a girl that ended up going to MMI. She went to Phoenix. And I had kind of just briefly seen it from that. And I think I kind of just like put it in the back of my head, you know, because like I said, prior to any of this, I never would have thought like this is what I would be doing now. And so that thought kind of came back to the forefront, and I was like, oh, I could go to MMI. Like, and like I said, I just had every opportunity to really do anything I wanted to do. And I think that just really ignited something in me to like, okay, what kind of career do I want for myself one day? You know, because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I've never really known for the most part. I've bounced around with different ideas. When I was working at a restaurant, I was also going through the fire academy to be a volunteer firefighter. So I did do that for like a quick second too, which like I had thought about that many times of like making that a career. So I kind of have bounced around a lot with different ideas. And I remembered that thought of MMI, and I remember my mom always telling me like I should really do that. And so it kind of just took off, and I looked it up on the computer really quick, and it was like the first page on the website. It's like, yeah, like inquire about it and everything. And I immediately just like did it. And I was living with my dad at the time, and I kind of told him my idea, and I was like, hey, like, what do you think about this? Because he was helping me a lot trying to like figure out kind of like what I wanted to do and everything. And so I was like, what do you think about this? And he was like, sounds great to me. Like, if you can figure it out and get it all set up, like, I'll support you, like, go for it.
Nice.
And I was like, sweet. And like, literally like that night I sent all of my information in. Like within that week, I think I got like information back from the school and got in contact with the right people. Amazing. I immediately started looking for like apartments in Florida, like doing the whole thing. Cause I was like, all right, I'm ready to go. Like, as soon as I did it, like I immediately was like, yes. And like, I was like, the biggest thing for me that is something I think back to a lot is I knew that I was doing the right thing, because I immediately, like as soon as I did it, cried just happy tears, because I was like overwhelmed with like that feeling of like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And like the passion that I had for it, like just leaked out of me at that moment, you know? And I was so excited, because I was like, this is my whole future. Like I envisioned the whole thing right there. And I was like, I'm so ready for this, like so overly excited.
That is so incredible. When you know, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. Very, very cool. Okay. So God, I mean, that just like, that gives me chills thinking about it. You know, not everybody gets to have that, right?
Yeah.
And like, that's such an incredible thing that you had kind of a series of happenstance kind of situations that led you to even have this cross your path, right? And then for it to just click so clearly and so I don't know, just emotionally, like that's just such a cool thing. Most people don't get that. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So you're enrolled to MMI before you know it. And tell me what school was like for you. What was this program like?
Whew. Well, I remember my first day, and the way the school is set up, you go through like moto classes, which are like just generic like motorcycle stuff, like your how to change tires and like what the different tires are, and like just looking at an engine and like measuring everything, just getting like a basic understanding and knowledge of everything. And then you go into like your specified like what you signed up for, which of course I signed up for the Harley program, which actually originally I was signed up for Kawasaki and Yamaha, and then I bought a Harley 2 weeks before school started, and then I completely switched it up.
I know that we're gonna put a pin in that because I want to like go back to like sport bike versus Harley, because that's but
but I remember my first day in class. Of course, I'm the only girl there. And I'm sitting there and there's an engine in front of me that I've never seen before. And the teacher's going through everything. And he's like, okay, now we're going to like take it all apart and measure all these different things. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Because I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Right. Because you had some mechanical inclination, but you really like
I had
went
nothing.
in
Like
blind.
like I said before, like I didn't grow up around it, nothing like that, nothing at all. So I just like everything was just brand new, and I'm like, oh no. Like, did I make the right decision? I don't know, but I stuck to it because, like I said, that passion that I had and that feeling that I had going into it and just signing up for it kind of drove me through the whole thing, because I was just like, I know this is what I want to do. So I kept with it. I ended up doing much better than I thought I would do. And it was definitely worth it. And I'm glad that I got over that little hump of like the first class of like, oh no, what am I doing here? To, graduating pretty close to like the top of my class and stuff like that too. So it was cool. Yeah.
I'm noticing a theme here. I don't know if anybody else is catching on to this. She's more confident than she thought she was. She did better than she thought she was going to. I have a feeling that you consistently underestimate yourself.
Yeah. My mom would say the same thing. So, yep. Everybody in my life though, really. But my mom has been pretty good at being like, you need to be more confident in yourself. But yeah, I am my own worst enemy. That is for sure.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
Aren't we all? And that's how we can see it in each other, right? So that's amazing. Okay, so how were the other students? You were the only girl in class.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have a lot of experience. You didn't know what you were getting into, really.
Yeah.
How were the teachers, the students?
Yeah.
What was it like?
It was good. Of course it was, like I said, it was super intimidating at first. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know, of course, how like they would be with me. Yeah. But I really didn't run into any issues. I got to the point where I had a lot of other students coming to me for help too, which I thought was interesting, because I'm like, I know just as much as you guys do, if not less. But I think I carried myself well, and I think that's why they felt comfortable enough like coming to me like for help as well, kind of thing. I have a buddy actually that I went through school with that recently like messaged me on Facebook, and he was like, can I call you? Like, I have a question about something. He was working on a bike, and he called me. He was like, I consider you to be pretty smart. And I'm like, I don't know why. I'm like, but okay. And he asked me for some advice on a bike that he was working on. And it's like stuff like that I never would have expected, especially like I said, like my first day there, like just really not knowing what I was getting myself into. And I was able to go through it and leave enough of a mark on the people that I went to school with that like they think I kind of know what I'm doing. So, and they feel like they can reach out to me and ask for advice with it, which is cool. So yeah, I really didn't have like any pushback or anything from like teachers or students. The students were pretty cool. I was kind of consistently with the same people throughout the whole thing. Of course, when I got to the Harley class, some of us split up, went different directions depending on like what we were doing. But yeah, I met a lot of really cool people, a lot of great teachers that like, I wish I could call them up at any moment and be like, hey, like, give me every bit of knowledge that you have now that I understand it a little bit more,
Right.
And there's some teachers that I still get to see. Like there's one teacher I had, I think twice while I was there that I can still have in my Harley classes now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he's actually my teacher for my next class, so I'll see him again too. So it's stuff like that. It's cool that I can still kind of connect with them. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So age old question, right? Because I get young people asking me this all the time. Do I go to tech school, or do I just get a job in the industry
Mhm.
and start working my way up from there?
Mhm.
Would you have done it any other way in hindsight?
I can't imagine doing it any other way, especially since I went in with not having any knowledge or any background in it. I don't think I would have been like confident enough and like because I feel like if I had just gone straight into like a dealership and just worked my way up from there, I feel like I maybe would have panicked a little bit too much in a way, possibly. I like that I was able to go to school and at least get some bit of an understanding before just getting like thrown out into the
Yeah.
world of it all. Especially coming from me that had absolutely no background whatsoever in it. To be able to get some bit of understanding at all, was nice too. And I think it helped me be able to be more confident going into the field too. So
Yeah. I'm definitely with you on that. I'm on the school side of that argument all day long, because
yeah.
I was like you. I came in with very little experience and knew nothing.
Mhm.
And so I think, if you grew up around it, maybe school isn't as valuable. But if you are coming into it with very relatively limited knowledge, it's a
Mhm.
game changer,
Yeah.
because you were able to come out of the school with already certifications, like ready to get a well-paid job at a dealership, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other big thing with school is you have to want it. Like you have to actually apply yourself and want to do it. Because unfortunately, the way the schools are now, I don't know if all of them are, but I do know it is this way with MMI. You can kind of just cruise through it, and still be able to graduate. And so if you don't really want it and actually want to do this for your career too, at the end of it, um, obviously there's not really that much of a benefit then.
Right.
So if you really like are passionate and want to do it and like that's your goal, then like I think it's definitely worth it to be able to get that little bit of extra, even if you already kind of had a little bit of an understanding, get a
Yeah.
little bit more just so that you can go to a dealership and be like, hey, I have this and this and lay it out to them and hopefully find a good dealership that's going to treat you well and take care of you. So I think it's
Yeah.
definitely worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you raise a really good point. Like, you get out of it what you put into it, right? I
Yes.
mean, like,
Yeah.
it's MMI, it's UTI, but I mean, it's school in general. It's any school. And like, let's be
Yeah.
honest, it's life in general, right?
Mhm.
You're gonna get out of it what you put into it. And
Yeah.
it's easy to skate by. And I
Mhm.
think sometimes the schools get a bad reputation because of the people who do skate by.
Yeah.
It's like, no, like, that's not
Yeah.
everybody.
We're not all just skating by. Some of us actually
Or
care.
well, it's
Yeah.
like the old joke, like, what do they call the person who graduated bottom of his medical school?
Yeah, right?
They still
A
call him
doctor.
doctor,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
or her doctor. I shouldn't be sexist, my goodness. Um, okay, so, all right, we've gotta go back to that thing that we put a pin in. Sport
Yes.
bike versus Harley bikes. Harley Davidson, Harley bikes, that's a weird statement. Harley motorcycles. Why Harley? You got your start in sport bikes. What made you make the switch? What is it about Harley that you love so much?
So it's funny because, of course, when I was in the sports bike world and I knew nothing about Harleys, I was just listening to everybody around me. And the sports bike community, for the most part, usually dogs on Harley quite a bit. Um, and so the whole time I was in the sports bike world, I was like, oh, Harley Davidsons are trash. Like, no, that's lame, blah, blah, blah. Like all the just like the dumb stuff, right?
Uh-huh.
And I was dead set on like sports bikes. Like I said, I rode a lot of different sports bikes that I shouldn't have at the level that I was at.
Mhm.
And it was fun and it was great. And then I don't even really know it was when I moved to South Carolina, which is where a big motorcycle rally is.
Okay.
I went to my first rally and I rode there on a sports bike, right? And it's mostly Harley Davidsons. But I saw that and I was like, wow, like I want to be a part of that. Like that's so cool. And I called it my old man phase. Even though Harleys are not for old people only, okay? They're for everybody. But that's what I called it. And I was
I
like,
think it's only. They're not for old people only.
They're for everybody.
So this was your old man phase, though.
Yes.
Okay.
I was like, I'm ready for that. Like, I want to be a part of that. Like, I just want this obnoxious motorcycle that just looks super cool, right? Because I also, like, once I was around it more, I was like, they look and they sound like no other. Like, it was just so much fun. And I just fully immersed myself in that. And when I went to school, like I said, all of a sudden, like, I just kept thinking about it. I was like, man, I really want a Harley. Like, I really want one. And I went by the Harley dealership in Orlando and I looked around. I test rode a couple bikes and I immediately, like, it made sense. And I was like, this is the bike I'm supposed to be on. Like, why have I been on sports bikes? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Right. And I immediately, like, I rode a couple Harleys. I bought the one that I have now. And I remember riding home on it and I was just like, wow, like, this is it. And I was hooked. My whole personality from there on was Harley Davidson. Like, I should just change my name. Like, ridiculous. And it just, like, took off from there. And sports bikes are fun. And I will say, I have always been the type of person that would love to have, like, a garage of motorcycles one day. And I wouldn't mind getting one again just to have for fun. But I would never get rid of my Harley. Like, I could never see myself, like, getting rid of it and only going to sports bikes again. There's a whole different, like, feeling and ride and everything to a Harley. Like, I don't even know how to describe it because it's such just, like, my whole body, just the stuff I've been able to do, the people I've been able to meet and everything due to my Harley is like no other. Like, I would not go back at all.
Fascinating. Interesting. As a sport bike girl myself, I struggle with this a little bit, but
have you rode a Harley? Have you rode one?
Well, so I rode the stereotypical Harley that they give women.
Black Street Glide?
Oh. Sportster.
Oh, a Sportster.
Because everybody
just talking about typical Harleys in general.
No, like what they give women, right? Like, because I rented bikes. I was out in Northern California and we rented motorcycles to go on a ride. And of course, like, for the women, they're like, oh, we've got Sportsters for you. And like no. I hated it. I absolutely hated the Sportster. I've been told by people since that they're not the ideal bike for women. So that's my only framework. My only point of reference.
Harley. See, that's the thing. It's like, that's such a bummer because, like, when I went and test rode Harleys, I didn't test rode a Sportster at all because I was like, no, like, I'm not getting a Sportster. Because at the time I thought kind of the same thing. Like, it's not the ideal thing because it's the small Harley, you know, it's the starter Harley. And I was past that point of like a starter bike. I wanted an upgrade because I had a smaller sports bike at that time. So I was like, no, I'm ready for like a big bike. Like, I want something, you know, that I'm going to be on for a minute because it's worth it. Right. Yeah. So it's a bummer that you had that experience, but at the same time, it does make sense because of, like, it is your typical, like, starter bike. It's a good bike to start on. And Sportsters are actually really cool once you, like, know them and know that you can do a lot to them and really, like, soup them up and, like, make them fun. But obviously, if you don't know that and you haven't experienced a Harley before and that's the first one you get on, you're like, I guess, you know, like, you really don't get, like, that full feeling until you, like, really get, like, a really good Harley that sounds good, it runs good, it feels good, it handles really well. There's a whole different vibe to that for sure.
I just love how much you light up, right? Like, I see you struggling for the words to describe what this, like, whole thing did for you. But, like, anybody who's watching this versus listening to it, I'm sure you could hear it in her voice too in the audio version. But watching her, like, she's like lighting up talking about this, like, visceral. You have this visceral reaction to it. Like, it is purely a soul connection.
Yeah. If I talk about certain things or get deep into, like, certain experiences that I've had when it comes to being in the Harley Davidson world, like, I'll get choked up and cry. Like, I'll get goosebumps, like, the whole nine, because it's been so life-changing for me, and it's been so fun, and I've been able to experience so many cool things due to it. So it's fun. It's exciting.
Okay, top one or two things that you've gotten to experience as a result of your marriage to Harley Davidson.
Um, well, I would have to obviously give a shout out to my wonderful, amazing boyfriend who I had met through Harley Davidson, who
Okay.
he also works at the dealership that I work at. He is the hardest working person I know. And he's incredible. And without any of what I've done, I would have never have met him. So he's definitely number one on my list. Second thing I would have to say is, which I actually sent you a picture of, and I didn't know like how you of course did things and if you were able to like pop pictures into this podcast.
I know, unfortunately not, but describe this picture for folks and then.
Okay, so I have a picture and it's a young little picture of baby Jamison, and I'm standing on hockey ice from my hometown that had a hockey team that I grew up going to. And it's baby Jamison with a trophy that I'm presenting to a hockey player. And I never would have thought again that I would be where I'm at now. And I went through some trials, of course, starting my career. I was at a dealership that wasn't the best fit for me at first. And I ended up where I'm at now. And they just skyrocketed me to like being able to do the coolest stuff that I never imagined that I would do. Right. And after my first class, my boss texted me and he was like, "Hey, you're going to build the Canes bike for this year." And I was like, "What?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And so every year, our dealership will do a custom paint job on a Harley Davidson that is associated with the Carolina Hurricanes hockey team, the NHL hockey team. And I got to be a part of this past year. And I remember just like, again, it was one of those things where like, I cried so many times, like thinking about this moment because I was so filled with excitement and happiness. And like, cause it was such a full circle moment for me of just on a scale that I never could have imagined. And I remember pulling up that photo and I went and showed my GM and I was like, "I just have to tell you how exciting this is for me." I said, because I grew up going to hockey games, right? And it's one thing that I've always had a love for. And I was like, this is the last time that I was on hockey ice. And I just have to show you this picture. And I showed him the picture and he was like, "Oh my God." He was like, "That's so cool." And I was like, "Yeah." So like the fact that you guys even are like letting me touch this bike and be a part of it, like it means so much to me, right? Because I'm like, this is so cool. It's like a full circle moment, right? Yeah. And normally our GM would walk the bike out on the ice and present it because they give it away, right? It's like a raffle. And they give it away during a game. And after I showed him that, he decided that he was going to let me go out on the ice with the bike. And I was just like, what? Like, this is crazy, right? Like I never would have imagined it. And it was so cool. And I get to compare that now to like my childhood when I was so little and I never would have thought that this is where I'd be now. And then you put it on the scale of NHL hockey ice, which is an arena 3 times the size of like the one that I grew up, going to. And not only that, but I'm with Harley Davidson, so it's like 2 such big things like put together and I got to be a part of it. And I'm like, this is ridiculous, right? Like absolutely insane. And since we're speaking about women being amazing, the woman that painted that bike also kind of like works hand in hand in our dealership. And she did the paint job on the bike and she's incredible. Nice. And amazing and totally kicked ass doing that. And she's just as cool. And
sounds like somebody I should have on the podcast.
Yes, I agree. But she does some crazy stuff. I've been able to do a couple projects with her as far as like her painting bikes and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
Her name's Ashley. But yeah, so it's like, it's stuff like that, that's just like so exciting that I'm like, wow, I get to be a part of something that's way bigger than me that like I never could have imagined. Right. And so that will like hold a place in my heart, I think forever, just being able to be a part of something like that. So yeah, it, like my inner child was just like screaming the whole time, like over the moon exciting. Yeah. So I think those are probably like my 2 like biggest things that like
That's awesome.
are the most, like, the coolest and best things that have happened to me
Yeah,
in
I
this.
love it. Okay, so some pretty phenomenal experiences. Definitely things that would not have happened had you not
Yeah,
gone down this path
yeah.
and gone out on a limb with this.
Mhm,
I love how you're just so in touch with like where you're being called to. And
mhm.
like clearly you have been your whole life and it's put you on this path that is like you're exactly where you're supposed to
Oh,
be. And
yeah.
that's just getting reinforced at every turn. And that's just so cool to see.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this first dealership that you were at versus the second dealership. So you've been
Mhm.
to two dealerships, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So how did you get your first job coming out of school? Let's talk about that first. And then why did
So,
it not be so good?
yeah, I kinda, when I was getting close to the end of school, I had like a kind of general idea that I wanted to go to. And I actually sent my resume out to a lot of different places because I was like, I might as well like look around just to see what's out there. I've never done this before, you know.
Yeah.
So see what kind of opportunities are out there. But I was dead set on going back close to like where I was living before because that's where most of my family and stuff were. So I was
Yeah.
like, I kind of really want to go back there. And so I was dead set on that, and it worked out. The offer and everything was good, and I was like, okay, cool. Like I'll be able to go back, you know, close to my family and my friends and everything. The start was good. I was kind of promised a lot of stuff that didn't really happen, and that's where I kind of got to the point where I was like, okay, might not work out for me. Um, and I again kind of got to the point where I was like, okay, I can definitely probably move around a little bit and see kind of like what else is out there. I definitely butted heads with some people. I don't like to throw the card out there like, oh, it's because I was a girl, but I mean, there was definitely evidence of like, yeah, I was a female and that didn't really sit right with them. Um, but it just didn't work out. And luckily it led me to where I'm at now because I found a dealership. Like I took a major pay cut to go where I'm at now,
Oh,
but
wow.
it's again one of those things that like I took the risk and I was just like, I need to see what else and opportunities there are out there for me. And I didn't want to be stuck somewhere that I knew I was going to be miserable because I definitely got to the point where you see me now and I talk about all this stuff and you can see like the passion in me like come out and it, like you said, like it lights me up. At that first dealership, that all went away, which was such a bummer because of course I went into it being like super excited, super passionate, like ready to go. And I had kind of this whole idea of like working at a Harley just because of like going into Harley dealerships and just getting the experience as a customer and having a
Yeah.
good time. I was like, I feel like it would also be cool to like be able to work at one. And I feel like it's probably a pretty fun work environment for the most part. And so I kind of had this whole idea. And when that got shut down like so hard at my first dealership, like I was in a cage in my first dealership. Like literally, like I was in the service department and that's the only place I was allowed to be. Like I wasn't allowed to be in other parts of the dealership. Customers didn't ever really see the technicians. Rarely spoke to the customers, like stuff. It was just weird, you know, and I felt so like secluded, which like granted, yeah, like it's my job. I'm supposed to be there, right? But like there was so little communication and like the technicians weren't really thought of, you know? And when I started looking for new dealerships, I started looking at all like their social media pages because I'm like, oh, let's see like kind of what they're about. Like, do they talk about the technicians at all? Because I'm like, I feel like that shows a lot about like they actually care about their technicians, like they're going to show them off, right? And I remember looking at the Instagram page for the dealership I'm at now, and they posted like full like little like descriptions with a picture of the technician, like individual posts. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, that's awesome. I was like, that's so cool. But to me, that showed me that like they care about their technicians. Like, here they are. Here's a little bit about them. Like, we want to show off what we have, you know, and like not just
Yes.
ignore that they're there as like, you know, the backbone of the company, you know, because like without a technician, you can't have a motorcycle. So it's like it's so cool that they were showing them off. And I was like, I want to be somewhere like that. And so
Yeah.
I immediately just like I found the service manager, I messaged him and it worked out. And like I said, I took a big pay cut to be able to go there. And it was a struggle. And I bully my boss about it to this day. But it's all worked out. And it was one of those things that like, it was so worth it to take that risk, even though I knew it was going to be hard and it was going to be tough. I'm so glad I did it because I'm at a dealership now that treats me so well. They appreciate me, they respect me, and they show that to me every day. And that's all I want. You know, I want to be able to be the same as everybody else. I work hard. So it's like, you know, I want to be able to like be appreciated for that. And so I ended up in a perfect spot for that. And I work with a lot of really great people now. So it worked out.
That's fantastic. You brought up so many amazing points in that story, and I think it's so important. I hope people hear that. Like the idea that you went and looked at their social media is such a huge thing. Like I so recommend that to any person looking for a new job because it tells you everything you need to know about the culture of a shop. Is how they advertise to their customers. They're also advertising to their technicians too, like their future technicians. And it's just, you know, I hear people in the trades, you know, hiring managers, owners of companies, owners of shops, dealership, you know, heads all the time saying there's just nobody's into this anymore. There's no good kids out there. They just don't want to get into this. And I'm like, you're wrong. There are so many people like you, right? Who come in bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and enthusiastic and full of joy and full of love. And then bad cultures in some of the shops out there, like just squash it.
Yeah. It like, I remember I got to the point where I was sitting in my car during my lunch breaks crying because I was like, it made me completely like unsure of like if it was what I was supposed to do. And it was such a weird feeling considering that I knew that I was so passionate and so excited for it. And then it was like so just torn away from me. And I was like, this doesn't make sense, you know? And I think, and I tell people anytime that I can, like when I go to the classes that I get to go to and some of the other people that, you know, might be dealing with issues with their dealership, I tell them, I'm like, look, like there are dealerships out there that will take care of you. And you have to sometimes take that risk to figure that out. And I got lucky and I was able to find one right away and I didn't have to look around very long or suffer through another year of like torment to, you know, maybe find something better. But it's out there and there are dealerships that will take care of you and appreciate you for what you are. So you just have to find it. And sometimes you got to take that risk to do it. So
yeah, 100%. And I'm so glad you stuck with it and you didn't let it take the love out of you. And I think we lose so many amazing people from our industries, from the trades in general, both men and women. But definitely we lose a lot of women for exactly that reason. Like we just, the love gets just drowned out of us by bad culture. So I'm so glad that you found an amazing culture to work at. Where I just looked at the time, we're getting close on time already. So I want to talk when we briefly met. So disclosure for anybody watching, like we got to meet for like all of like what, an hour when she was out in Phoenix for Harley Davidson continuing training. So you told me a story where you got kind of beating your head against the wall a little bit with a project that you were really frustrated with and having trouble diagnosing. And you had an employer who really had your back. And I think that just tells such a great story. Would you mind sharing that?
Yeah. So yeah, I had a bike that I was very much struggling to figure out what was wrong with it. I had exhausted pretty much all of my efforts. I was reading everything that I could in the manual. I was measuring everything that I could think of to measure. I do have the benefit of working alongside 4 other master technicians. So I'm surrounded by knowledge and experience at all times. So of course I was going to them, asking for advice from them. I even had a couple of them looking at the bike with me, trying to help me figure it out. And none of us could really figure it out. And I finally got to the point where I went to my boss, who you're referring to, that kind of pushed me along. I went to him and I went to him and I was like, I give up. Like, I don't know what else to do. I have done everything that I can. I was like, give it to somebody else. Like, just let somebody else put it on somebody else's lift, let them look at it kind of thing. Because I don't know what to do anymore at this point, you know? And sometimes it's good to be able to like take a step back and let somebody else look at it, you know, because because I'm very hard headed and it's hard for me to give up. And that can sometimes cloud your mind, you know, because you'll get so sucked into it that you need to step back for a second, right? So I do remember that I took a break, I think, and I think I maybe worked on something else, and I eventually like made my way back to it. But my boss in that moment, when I said that I gave up, he was like, he got so excited and he was like clapping and he was smiling at me. And I'm like, this is not the time to be excited. You know, like I was mad. And he was like, I'm so excited. And I was like, why? And he was like, because you are a snake and you are about to shed your skin. He was like, because you are in a rock and a hard place. He was like, but keep going. Like, you will figure it out. You will, I know you will, right? He was like, just keep going. And of course, in that moment, that's not what I wanted to hear. But it's
what you needed to hear.
Yeah. And it goes back to the fact that I am in the right place and I work at an amazing dealership with wonderful management. And I'm glad that I have a boss that is pushing me to figure it out and, you know, grow in my career, you know, because he could have easily at any moment just taken that bike and just given it to somebody else, right? But he pushed me to keep going and figuring it out. And I did finally figure it out. And it was chaos, you know, because I remember I hop, skipped, and a jump back over to his office, and I was like, guess what? And he was like, what? And I was like, I figured it out. And I was so excited because then, of course, like, again, all that light came back. And even though I was beating myself up over it, that moment of finding it was just like amazing, right? Like everything else like went away. Everything, like the whole struggle of dealing with it up until that point, like it was worth it, you know, even though it sucked. It was worth it to get to that point of like, yes, I figured it out. Sweet, you know? And then it turned into the biggest job I've done since being in the field, which I also didn't think that I was going to get to do. I remember when my boss finally gave me the work order to go ahead and, because I had to do a full overhaul on the engine. And so I remember when he gave me the work order, I was like, I'm doing that? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, me? I was like, are you sure? You know? But he's like, yeah, like, why wouldn't you do it? And I'm like, I don't know, because there's 4 other master techs here. Like, I figured it would go to one of them. And he's like, no, you're going to do it. And I'm like, okay, cool. You know? And so like, I get excited for stuff like that too. Cause like, that is also more of like me being able to progress in my career and learn new things, which is exciting. So it was very cool. It was a struggle, and it was tough, and it was hard, and it drove me absolutely insane, but it's a good story to tell. And it's a fun story to tell, especially telling people that like understand, of course, the whole engine and how it works. And it's like, oh, guess what I found? You know, Harley didn't machine an oil passage hole for this motorcycle, and it sent me on a wild goose chase, you know? So it was fun, but yeah, it goes back to the fact that like, again, I work for great people, and I have a manager that believes in me and pushes me to be my best, which is great, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I give that man a raise, whoever's in charge of that. No, it's such a testament. I mean, if we talk to the managers at both of those shops, right? The shop that dimmed your light and made you want to quit and give up, and the shop that celebrates you and has your back and pushes you to be the best version of yourself and gives you the opportunity to have those moments where you're like, I love what I do, right?
Yes,
like I love everything about what I do. Both of those people would say such completely different things about the state of young people in our industry, right?
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with the state of young people in our industry. It has everything to do with management. It has everything to do with culture. It has everything to do with whether we give people a chance to shine, whether we help them grow, or whether we like squash them.
Yeah.
I'm so thrilled that you found such an amazing place. It sounds like a phenomenal culture. And I want to echo again what you said to everyone else out there. Like, if you're at a crappy spot, don't be afraid to go someplace different.
Yes.
There are good spots out there.
Yeah. Don't let it take away that passion that you have for it. If you have that passion and it excites you that much, like, don't let one place ruin it for you. There's other places out there for sure.
Yep. no matter what that is, right? Whether it's because you're a woman and they're giving you a hard time, or whether they're just a crappy environment, or treat their techs poorly, like you said, like not treating them like human beings, like
Yeah.
whatever the reason is, find the place
Mhm.
that's going to treat you well.
Yeah, for
Awesome.
sure.
Okay. We have just a few short minutes left. Is there anything we haven't touched on yet that you would love to talk about before I get to my final
I'm
question?
trying to think. I would like to shout out just to like
Yeah.
pay more attention to how amazing my dealership is. Which, if anybody wants to know, it's Tobacco Road Harley Davidson, if I can say where I work.
Totally.
Because we do ship motorcycles. If you guys want to buy a
You're
motorcycle
so
from
cute.
us, we do ship them to anywhere. And speaking of shipping motorcycles, we do have two amazing female salespeople. One of them is Mari. Her name's Mari. She goes by My Turn Moto online though. She's big on TikTok and everything. She's amazing.
Awesome.
We also have Madison. She's pretty new to the world, but she's pushing through it and learning a lot of new stuff. And it's cool to see that. I'm not the only female in this dealership. We love to support everybody. So I just want to give them a shout out because they're also amazing. And Ashley, who I mentioned earlier, she owns her own business and it's called Shiny Side Paint.
Nice.
And like I said, she does a lot of paint stuff. I've been able to work alongside her and do stuff with her too. So it's not just me that gets to be able to have exciting things happen in my workplace because I'm a woman and I work for a dealership that supports it. We have a lot of other women. We also have Katie in detail. She is like our head detailer and she kicks ass down there. So it's really cool. It's to be able to be in that environment, be surrounded by so many people that support us and pushes us to do more. So that's cool.
I'm ready to apply for a job there.
Look, I'm sure we need a service writer. If you want to be a service writer, you can write up my work orders for me.
I love it. Okay, we've got a question for you from the audience. What is your dream? I don't know if that's supposed to be dream role or dream ride, but let's ask both. What's your dream role? What's your dream ride?
My dream role, like in what way? Like
no, maybe that's
overall?
in the dealership. I read that as ride before I put that on the board. Full disclosure,
and that's That's coming from Mari, who is the saleswoman that works with us. So I would think it would be dream ride coming from her, but
yeah, okay, we're gonna go with that. What is your dream ride? When you talked about having a garage full of motorcycles, what would be in there?
There would be a lot. There would be a lot. I have always said that the Harley that I have right now, I wouldn't get rid of. I'd like to keep it forever. I'd like for it to be like the motorcycle I can pass down to my children kind of thing. Which I do love that bike so much. If I could pick another one though, like if I could just buy anything tomorrow.
Yeah, if money were no object, if you could just wave a magic wand and have a garage full of awesome motorcycles.
We do have, I get bullied for it all the time because I love this bike so much, but we have a Street Glide on our floor right now with a custom paint job on it. And it's black and orange because when I went full Harley Davidson, I also went full color scheme too. Like the Harley I have now is black and orange. Okay. It's like everything that I love. So like I would definitely get
drank the Kool-Aid. 100% drank the Kool-Aid.
I had one sip of it and it was it. So I would definitely snag that bike right away. And I would throw a gnarly cam in it for sure to soup it up a little bit. I've always liked road. It's weird though, because that's a Street Glide and I actually prefer road glides over Street Glides. But man, there's so many cool options out there right now. It's hard to say. That wouldn't be my first one though, that Street Glide, just because I love it. It's beautiful. I want a chopper. If I could really have anything, I would have a shovel head chopper. That's one project that I really want to be able to have and do. I'm trying to think of anything else like off the top of my head. Those are the first two that pop into my head for sure.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Okay, so as we wind down on time, my final question to you. You ready?
I know I'm scared.
If you had the opportunity to go back and talk to little baby Jamison and tell her anything, give her a piece of advice, tell her whatever. What are your words for her?
I would say to not be so hard on myself. Because clearly looking back, I'm more confident than I think I am. Um, but to listen to my mom more because I maybe could have started this sooner. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is just to be more confident in myself. Because like I said, that's definitely something I struggle with a lot. It's something that I'm learning to cope with much better than I used to be able to cope with. Luckily, like I said, with the people that I have surrounding me, my boyfriend especially, that constantly is like, why are you talking bad about yourself? You know, because you're amazing. So being able to have people like that to definitely help a lot. But I think that would definitely probably be the biggest thing I would tell little me is that like everything's going to be okay. Don't let like everything that's ever happened to you ruin anything or take away your spark or dull you or anything like that. Be confident in yourself and like keep pushing forward.
Beautiful. I love it. And God, a support system is everything. You are so right.
Yeah, I have a killer support system. I am very lucky when it comes to that. I have so many friends and family and coworkers that are just absolutely amazing. That's for sure. I definitely lucked out in that department.
That's fantastic. I love it. You're phenomenal. Thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing your journey and your experiences. This was very cool.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you had all of the happenstance things happen that allowed you to find your passion and that you found a dealership and an environment that has allowed that to really grow. The sky's the limit. I'm excited to continue to watch your career. So thank you so very much for saying yes and doing this and sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. You have no idea, like I came back to my dealership after meeting you the other week and I was like, listen to this, you know, and I was just so excited and like over the moon. So I'm so glad I was able to cross your path, and shout out to Zena too, who introduced me to you because she is a doll. And I'm so glad I was able to have this opportunity and I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we will see each other more, I am sure, in the future.
I am sure.
Very cool. And folks at home, you can go follow her. I'm going to have her link down in my description below, so you can follow along on her journeys and see where her career takes her from here and learn more about her dealership and the amazingness that is going on there. And thank you guys just in general for being along for the ride as we try to normalize women in the trades. This is a revolution. One day podcasts like this will not be necessary. We will all just be trades folks who some happen to be men and some happen to be women, and it's no big thing. But for right now, there's so few of us. We got to celebrate. Yeah. So, so thank you all for being a part of that. And Jamison, of course, thank you for sharing your story. Make sure you guys leave likes and comments down below. The more you interact with us, the more other people see these amazing stories and meet these amazing women, and the more we normalize women in the trades. So it's all full circle. So I appreciate your help in making that happen. Make sure you come back next week to meet another incredible tradeswoman. And of course, every Monday, you can see an archive episode of one of our episodes from this series' past life when it used to live on Instagram. So 2 times a week, you get to watch with her 2 hands. And with that, I'm going to bid you guys a good night. Until next week, be good to yourselves, be good to one another, be good human beings, and we will see you later. Bye, guys.
Bye.